I will explain about the direct translations method and the technique that this method contains. And the first is borrowing. But what is borrowing? It's a common translation technique. This technique also allows the translator to put a text clearly within a particular context through the register of the vocabulary it uses. Sometimes allow people belonging to a community of similar interests to transcend linguistic boundaries. I have some examples about the technique borrowings, and the first is I like drink coffee. The borrowing is coffee, and the second example is the pupusas are very delicious. Obviously, the word is pupusas, and I don't want to eat sushi. The borrowing word is sushi. In conclusion, I read this. In conclusion, borrowing is one of the most used translation techniques. Okay, we'll continue with the second technique, that is calque, and I read a little bit about this technique. In linguistics, a calque is actually a word or phrase borrowed from another language by literal word-for-word translations. Example, this is something easy. When you take a phrase in French and then literally translate word for word into English, that is calque. I have some more examples, and okay, I read that. Examples, balonmano, when we translate in English, it's humble. Or the another example is skyscraper is the translation in English, gate seal is the translation in French, and rascacielos is the translation in Spanish. This is very simple and easy. Just is used in practice the translation word for word. Okay, now I will explain that the third technique is literal translations. According to Binet and Deverman, a literal translation can only be applied with language which are extremely close in cultural terms. It is acceptable only if the translated text retains the same syntax, the same meaning, and the same style as the original text. For example, okay, in the class the teacher gives some examples, and I remember one that is that the girl is sick. In Spanish, when we translate this sentence is la niña está enferma. It's the simple translations. The girl, la niña, is está sick. It's enferma in Spanish. And another example is another example can be the boy want to eat cake. El niño quiere comer pastel. It's the simple translation, and it's very easy, and we can put in practice when for some person it's difficult to understand some things, we can practice this method. And that's it. Thank you.
Hello, Mise. Now I explained about oblique translation method. Are used when the structural. I use the structural or conceptual element of the source language cannot be directly translated without altering meaning of using the grammar and stylistic element of the target language. In the translations, method include transpositions. Transposition, this is the process where parts of a speech change their sequence when they are translated. Blue ball becomes bold blue in French. Okay, this is sentence switch of word class. Grammatical structures are often different in different language. For example, in English, ha, nickel, now past participle. In Spanish is tejido a mano, participle más adverbial phrase. And the second step is we have a modulation. Modulation consists of using a phrase that is different in the source and target language to convey the same idea. For example, in Spanish is te lo dejo, and English is I leave it to you. And the third step is equivalence. Equivalence, here you have to express something in a completely different way. For example, when translation idioms or advertisements is slogan, the process is creative, but not always easy. Word would you have translate the movies, the sound of music into in Spanish as novicia rebelde, the rebel is novice, in Latin America, or sonrisas y lágrimas, smile and tear in Spain. And the last step is adaptation. Adaptation occurs when something specific to one language culture is expressed in a totally different way that is familiar or appropriate to another language culture. It is a special cultural environment. Show pincho, a Spanish restaurant menu dish, be translated as killed in English, is involving sharing the cultural reference when a situation in the such culture does not exist in the target culture. For example, in France has vegan jokes, and English has idiots. And this is my explanation about the oblique technique, and that's all.